What's up, guys? Pokemon from the Ubers tier have historically been dropped into OU a few times, and usually end up banned quite quickly, but not always. Darkrai, for example, has been successfully integrated into OU, at least according to most players. Despite generations in Ubers and a 600 base stat total, Darkrai was deemed acceptable for OU. Are there any other Pokemon in Ubers that deserve a test? Pokemon in Ubers that would be fine in OU. In this video, I'm going to look into some Pokemon that have been Ubers for generations, and that I think might finally be time to give them a chance in OU. Before we get into it, I should clarify that I'm not recommending these Pokemon be dropped and tested, at least until we've reached a more stable metagame. SVOU currently needs more bans, certainly not more broken Pokemon. I'll go over the top 5 Pokemon that I think might be okay in OU. I'll start by explaining the pro-drop argument, then explain why it still might be broken in OU. I'll be going in order of least likely to most likely to be okay in OU. First up, number 5, or the least likely to be fine in OU on this list, is Arceus Bug, or Bugkius. Bugkius has been a joke for many generations, and it sees very little Ubers usage. Still, it would definitely be no joke in OU. With 120 in every stat and one of the best move pools in the entire game, Bugkius is undoubtedly still an amazing Pokemon, even if it is the worst form of Arceus. Those in favor of dropping Bugkius would argue that it will suffer from its lack of an item, and the hazard weakness will be a major drawback. It is true, Monobug is a pretty bad type, and it sacrifices both an item and its ability multi-type to become a bug type. Those against dropping Bugkius would say that it still has a 120 base in every stat, for an insane total of 720. That, combined with the variety of setup moves it can run, is terrifying. Calm Mind, Dragon Dance, Bulk Up, Swords Dance, even Cosmic Power stored power sets, who knows what you'll be dealing with? Well, at least you can count on it being a weak bug type. Except, Gen 9 has Terra. When you consider Terra as well as all the insane move pool options Arceus Bug has, you can quickly see why it would be impossible to prepare for. I still consider it one of the more worthy Ubers to drop. It would be quite Terra-reliant, and all variants would still struggle with common unaware Pokemon, Dondozo, Clodsire, and Skeledirge, but realistically, with 120 in every stat and so many good ways to set up, I really doubt Arceus Bug would be balanced in OU. Still, if we ever get all the broken OU Pokemon banned to Ubers, I wouldn't mind a week or two of trying it out. Maybe we'll be surprised and the hazard weakness plus Terra-reliance will be more devastating than anyone expects. Next up, number 4 is Reshiram. Reshiram has actually never been good in Ubers, at least since very early in Generation 5, although later in the generation it's not a popular option. Reshiram is a Fire and Dragon type with incredible base 150 special attack, a respectable 120 base attack, and very solid bulk as well, with base 100 HP, base 100 defense, and base 120 special defense. Its main disadvantage is its poor speed at base 90, which is poor for a breaker in both Ubers and OU. It has a solid move pool with all the coverage it could realistically want. It has no special setup, but it can set up on the physical side with Dragon Dance. Notably though, Reshiram lacks any recovery except for rest. Its ability, Turbo Blaze, is basically just Mold Breaker, meaning that the moves it uses will ignore the opponent's abilities. This means that Dragon Dance sets will ignore Unaware from walls like Dondozo, and Reshiram's signature 130 base power fire move, Blue Flare, could hit a Flash Fire Heatran or burn a Purifying Salt Garganacl. In OU, Reshiram would likely run 4 sets: Choice Specs, Choice Scarf, Heavy Duty Boots, and Dragon Dance. Dragon Dance sets would essentially be Gouging Fire without booster energy, but you can't stop it with Unaware Pokemon. It also would lack recovery. Honestly, this might be manageable. Gouging Fire was broken, but it existed for a long time before the player base strongly supported banning it, and Booster Energy and Morning Sun was a major part of why it was considered broken. Reshiram has better special bulk, but worse physical bulk than Gouging Fire, and only 5 points higher in attack. The special sets are where we start to have issues. Blue Flare is an incredibly powerful and spammable move. The only OU Pokemon that can resist both Blue Flare and Draco Meteor is Primarina, which has no recovery, and doesn't actually even take Blue Flare particularly well. Even heavy-duty boot sets are incredibly powerful. To give you an idea, Blue Flare from a heavy-duty boots Reshiram has a decent chance to 2-hit KO max special defense Galarian Slowking. When you add Choice Specs and Choice Scarf to the mix, things get pretty crazy. Choice Spec sets can basically only be handled by Blissey. Even Ting Lu is getting 2-shot by Choice Spec's Blue Flare. And remember, Flash Fire won't save you thanks to Turbo Blaze. Choice Scarf sets, although perhaps not broken, would make for a very annoying guessing game with other Reshiram sets. Overall, perhaps if Choice Specs didn't exist, Reshiram would be okay in OU, but as it stands, I still think Reshiram is far too powerful. Only stall teams could handle the strength of Blue Flare. Still, I could be wrong, and we must remember that Reshiram is a very slow Pokemon with base 90 speed and weak to Stealth Rock. Perhaps special walls like Primarina, Garganacl, and Assault Vest Alomomola would rise up to challenge Reshiram. I don't think Reshiram would be okay in OU, but I'd be down to give it a try once the metagame stabilizes. Next up, the third least broken Uber if dropped into OU is Lugia. Lugia has been considered a terrible legendary for a long time. Still, it has incredible defenses, with 106 base HP, 130 base defense, and 154 base special defense. It has surprisingly great speed at base 110, the same as Ogerpon. The disappointing side of Lugia is that it has only base 90 in both attacking stats, making it weaker than Clefable. Lugia has 2 incredible abilities though. Multiscale, the same ability as Dragonite, halving damage when at full health, and Pressure, which is normally a mediocre or poor ability, but PP stalling can be great on a wall like Lugia. Its move pool, though, leaves much to be desired. Lugia has a fantastic attacking move pool and recovery, but little else useful on the defensive side. No status moves, no entry hazards, and no knockoff makes Lugia extremely passive in Ubers, as it would be in OU, until you consider setup variants. Some would certainly use Lugia for its ability to wall, but this isn't the set that would make it broken in OU. Defensive sets of Lugia would be quite easy to handle. Now sure, Whirlwind would be a nightmare for hyper-offense teams, much like Ting Lu, but similarly to Ting Lu, there would be ways of working around this. Lugia would be very vulnerable to knockoff, stealth rock, status, and setup. Lugia also struggles against common Pokemon in the tier like Kingambit, Gholdengo, Ting Lu, Galarian Slowking, Tinkaton, Iron Crown, Raging Bolt, Garganacl, and more. I'm quite confident that defensive sets of Lugia would not be too much for OU to handle. The real threat is the setup variants. Lugia has access to Calm Mind. It also has a signature move, Aeroblast, which is a high critical hit 100 base power flying type special attack. Even with only 8 PP, this is a fantastic move. Calm Mind, Recover, Aeroblast, and then some coverage move for the last slot would be very difficult to deal with. Lugia notably does not have access to stored power, but Calm Mind sets would still be very potent. Lugia would set up, be nearly impossible to kill due to its bulk, and have Terra available to sweep as well. And with how fast Lugia is, the only Encore user fast enough to lock it into Calm Mind is Iron Valiant, which risks getting one-hit KO'd if caught by an Aeroblast when switching in. Trying to use unaware Pokemon to beat it could be shut down by Psychic Noise. Calm Mind Lugia would be an absolute menace. Those against dropping Lugia would say that these Calm Mind sets are just too difficult for offensive teams to deal with. Still, it's far from unbeatable. Those in favor of dropping Lugia would argue that these Calm Mind sets can be stopped by offensive pressure like any other sweeper. It's true that Lugia doesn't match up well into many of the tier's top threats, even if a few Calm Minds can change that story. And on the defensive side, unaware Pokemon with Terra Dark would probably reliably stomp Lugia. I would personally say that Calm Mind sets still push Lugia over the edge, and it's probably too broken to be an OU. But I definitely might be wrong, and I'd like to see how it fares at some point. Next, at number 2, we have Giratina. I'll be addressing both the base form and the origin form, as I think they'd be similar levels of broken, or rather not broken, in OU. Let's start with the base form of Giratina. It's a Ghost and Dragon type, and it has incredible 150 base HP and 120 in both defenses, making it more bulky than Dondozo's physical side on both the physical and special side. It has reasonable 100 base attacking stats and 90 base speed, which is really good for a wall. It has a solid offensive move pool, but notably no recovery outside of rest, and only Calm Mind for setup. As we discussed with Lugia though, Calm Mind is no joke. Giratina also has the ability Pressure, which makes the opponent lose 2 PP for every attack they use against you. Normally this isn't a great ability, but as I said with Lugia, on an amazing wall, Pressure is a very real threat. Those in favor of dropping Giratina would argue that although it has incredible bulk and the ability Pressure, it isn't that great of a wall. A Ghost and Dragon type wall doesn't seem that amazing in a tier infested by Ghost, Dark, and Fairy types. Those against dropping Giratina would say that, especially with Terra, Giratina is just too bulky, and it would be far too easy for it to shut down or PP stall many sweepers and breakers in the tier. Both arguments seem logical and valid. The only solution would be to test it out and see what happens. Now let's talk about the origin form. It's very similar, except it exchanges its defenses with attacking stats, switching the 120 for the 100, and it trades Pressure for Levitate. The origin form notably must run the Griseus Orb. Not a bad item, since it gives a 1.2 times boost to Ghost and Dragon moves, but no Pokemon likes being forced to run an item, and this does take leftovers off the table. The threat with Giratina Origin is the Calm Mind sets, for sure. Levitate is an ability that pairs incredibly well with defensive setup and Calm Mind. Even a Pokemon of mediocre bulk like Latios can be very difficult to break with Calm Mind, Levitate, and a defensive Terra type. Terra Steel and Terra Poison are very popular options for Levitate setup sweepers since you maintain the incredibly useful ground immunity. The pro-drop argument would argue that these sets wouldn't be a huge problem. With base 90 speed, Giratina Origin can be encored by many Pokemon. It would also be quite a Terra hog. Ghost Dragon is a truly terrible defensive type in the current metagame, and although it would be strong with Terra, it may need Terra to function well. Furthermore, its physical bulk is not insurmountable. If Giratina chooses to use a rest set, the only way it can recover, there are many physical attackers that could do enough damage to kill Giratina as it sleeps, or at least force another rest and fish for a critical hit. The anti-drop argument would be that these Calm Mind sets are simply too much. Levitate and Terra, paired with insane bulk and respectable power, would make it a nightmare for teams to deal with that aren't specifically designed to counter it. Some are also concerned about the Calm Mind sets on regular Giratina. These sets would be able to run leftovers, which is definitely nice, and they would have superior bulk, but without Levitate, I don't see a Terra type that would make regular Giratina with Calm Mind broken, especially with its lower power level. Personally, I think the pro-drop arguments are stronger here, and I'd like to see how Giratina does in OU. I don't think it would be nearly as bad as people expect. Before we get to number 1, please remember to subscribe and like the video if you're enjoying. It really helps out a lot. Now, lastly, the Pokemon that I think would be least problematic if dropped to OU, Solgaleo. Note that I am not talking about Necrozma Duskmane, I'm talking about Solgaleo. It's a Steel and Psychic type with solid 137 base attack, amazing defenses with 137 base HP, 107 base defense, and 89 base special defense. Solgaleo has a mediocre 97 base speed and a surprisingly respectable 113 base special attack. Solgaleo's move pool is mostly great. It has all the coverage it could possibly hope for, with access to close combat, knockoff, flare blitz, heat crash, earthquake, stone edge, and wild charge, as well as strong stabs in Sunsteel Strike, its signature 100 base power physical steel move, and Psychic Fangs. It also has recovery in the form of Morning Sun, which is really nice. The main problem with Solgaleo's moveset, and the main reason I think it would be decent in OU and not a huge problem, is that it has no way to boost its attack, other than Psych Up if you want to count that. It doesn't get Swords Dance, Bulk Up, Dragon Dance, or even Howl. Solgaleo has other stat boosting moves, like Calm Mind, Cosmic Power, Iron Defense, Agility, and Meteor Beam, but since it doesn't get stored power, none of these variants lead to particularly strong setup sweepers. On top of that, Solgaleo's ability won't help it out much. It has Full Metal Body, which is exactly the same as Clear Body, one of Dragapult's abilities. It prevents stats from being lowered, which is great for Landorus Intimidate and Sticky Web teams, but it's not a fantastic ability by any means. The best sets of Solgaleo would likely be Teleport Pivot, Choice Scarf, Choice Band, and 3 attacks plus Morning Sun. Frankly, I don't think any of these would be broken. Teleport Pivot sets don't even get Stealth Rock, so they would probably just run Morning Sun, Knockoff, Sunsteel Strike, and Teleport. 3 attacks plus Morning Sun, Choice Scarf, and Choice Band sets would run Sunsteel Strike, Flare Blitz, or Heat Crash, and then some combination of the coverage moves I discussed earlier. 137 attack is a lot, but it's not that crazy in OU. Landorus has base 145 attack, Kingambit has 135, Dragonite 134, Great Tusk 131, and Iron Valiant and Kyurem are at 130. On top of that, Steel and Psychic are pretty bad offensive types, especially when Sunsteel Strike and Psychic Fangs make contact. After considering these sets and looking at some calcs against common OU Pokemon, I really don't see how Solgaleo would be broken in OU. Maybe it would be so good that it has an unhealthy presence and ends up being banned. It does have good attack, good coverage, and fantastic bulk, but I really don't see it being outright broken. Personally, I think Arceus Bug, Reshiram, and Lugia would be broken in OU, but Giratina and Solgaleo would be fine. But let me know what you think in the comments. Which of these 5 would you like to see get a suspect test? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.